Yep, I am definitely back at level 0. Well, when in doubt, back to the basics. Greetings, my name's Chidori and welcome to my very first devlog. It only took me, 30 slimes? But yeah, it's here now. Considering how long I've taken to make this, I'd figured an update of sorts is in order. So, a little under a year ago, I started animating slimes as a way to learn animation while developing a game. Seeing as I have a track record for falling behind in that, you can probably guess what happened. Well, life happened and I ended up not making slimes for a good few months and didn't work on the game at all. I'm getting caught up now, but I was really naive to think making 2 slimes and working on a game would be easy with the amount of time I really have. On the bright side though, I feel confident enough in basic animation to make some simple sprites, so that's a plus. Now, with that update aside, what is this game I've been going on about for almost a year now? To be honest, my biggest roadblock, next to time of course, is that I didn't know what exactly I wanted to make for a solid half year. I've had way too many ideas, very few of them actually good, but ideas nonetheless. Instead of rambling on about all of those ideas, I'll tell you about the trend I noticed among all of them. They were all somewhat incoherent and lacked a sense of direction and purpose. By that I mean they seem to be a chain of just various identity crises that didn't know what they wanted to be. On top of that, their scopes were all way beyond what I could possibly achieve at my skill level. As much as I enjoy animating slimes, I'd sooner hit slime 500 before I got even close to making some semblance of one of those ideas. So I came to the conclusion, via the advice and guidance I guess of many other big brain sources, that it'd be best to start small. I chose a single interesting mechanic that I wanted to explore, the concept of absorption and the resulting evolution, an easily animated character through which that mechanic could be expressed, a slime, and a game type where it'd be fun to use said mechanic, a wave-based survival game. So there you have it. This is going to be a game where you play as a slime in a classic RPG world, where all the heroes and adventurers see you as nothing more than free XP. Your job is to survive as long as possible against waves of adversaries by absorbing elements from your environment or your enemies to sustain yourself and fight back. Just want to clarify though, the game itself is not going to be an RPG, it's just the setting is in an RPG world. So now that I finally have a defined idea in mind, I think it's about time I showed you what I have so far. I'm gonna be honest, not much. Most of the 18-ish hours I spent on this was me just trying to remember solutions to problems I had solved in Unity back in my prime, if you can even call it a prime. However, my main goal with this was to just get the foundation of my game somewhat built so that I could start developing the core systems. That being said, I started by making a slime player character that could move, jump, crouch, or squish down? Do slimes crouch? I don't know. I also implemented a simple absorption mechanic that allows the player to gather elemental mana while in contact with certain areas of the environment. It occurs naturally at an incredibly slow rate, but the player can activate it to accelerate the process and expand its range, as shown here, at the cost of some movement speed. Right now, I've limited the available mana in the environment to just Earth to keep things simple, but I plan to expand to other elements once I get the core system set in stone. No pun intended. The absorbed mana is stored in a resource bar for later use, though there is currently no way to use said mana. There's also a little toggle feature that will allow the player to switch between the various elements as well as the default form, which will be put to use once I add more elements. As far as enemies go, I spent a good chunk, if not the majority of my total time on this project so far, building a reusable script for various enemy behaviors. Though it's kind of bare bones and only works for melee enemies right now, I'm pretty proud to say that it's fully functioning and it's very usable in its current state. I won't go through its functionality in extreme detail, but it essentially allows me to customize things as simple as an enemy's max health, something as intricate to how long it'll take to, let's say, an enemy will take to recover after any given action. With this, I won't have to make a new script for each enemy. I'll only have to make different hitbox presets to insert into the reusable script and adjust the parameters as needed. In the game's current state, enemies can attack and deal damage to the player. The only way players can currently damage enemies is by, well, how do basic slimes usually do damage? By touching the target. The player's default means of attack will simply be touching enemies to drain health at a steady rate. There will be other methods in the future to deal damage, but for now I just needed a way to test an enemy's ability to take damage directly from the player, and this seemed to be the simplest yet most intuitive way for a slime to do so. Now, you might be thinking, this doesn't seem like much, so why did it take 18-ish hours, even with the rustiness? Now that is quite simple. Bugs. I intended to talk about them as I explained the systems, but I realized that I didn't actually record any of them, and recreating them would actually take way more time than I have available. So I'm just gonna rapid fire ramble off some of the more prominent ones that really stumped me as a beginner returning to Unity. Alright, here we go. Starting with the infinite jump bug. That was just a result of how I have the jumping mechanic set up in the project currently. The way it's set up right now is that you can only jump when the player's feet collider is attached, well not attached, but touching another object in the world. But because it can technically touch the enemy's feet collider, as long as they're touching, they can keep jumping indefinitely. So to fix that, I just had to add a little ignore collision line of code in there. As for the super low gravity, all I had to do was kick that up a few notches. That wasn't really a big deal. With the absorption mechanic, it would only work for the frame you activated it and while moving. So it turns out Unity's colliders have to be told to stay awake when not in motion and not being interacted with, so who would have thought? Now the double damage bug actually led to an interesting realization about how colliders work in Unity. I realized the enemy attack hitboxes were dealing damage to the player for each collider stuck on the player when they're only supposed to be reacting to collisions to the body hitbox. So I just had to pop in another collision ignore line of code and that one was taken care of. Lastly, I'll talk about an enemy mechanic that actually gave me quite the headache, honestly. When the player is sort of just directly on top of the enemy, they'll enter this mode I call a G.O.M state, or a G.O.M state, get off me. So basically how it works is they'll just use an attack that will go around their entire sprite, I suppose. That'll just kind of be the signal for the player to like, book it, get out of the way. The problem is when they use this ability, it would just stay on permanently, and I racked my brain for so long trying to figure out what I did wrong here. And it turns out I never gave it an off switch, so they would always default to that ability instead of switching between the other options. So that was odd and kind of funny, honestly. Funny thing about bugs is, well, about these bugs in particular, is they were all simple, easy fixes that took me hours to figure out because, you know, at this point it's really just shaking off the rust, trying to remember what I forgot and then learning a lot as we go. So yeah, actually it feels good to know that I actually got something in the works now, but it sucks knowing that I won't be able to work on this game nearly as much as I want to. This devlog was supposed to be out in January, or at least by the end of January, but as per usual, life took priority. So I've come to this understanding that if I really want to take game dev seriously, which I do of course, I really need to start allotting time for all parts of this process, including making these videos of course, because I like to just have these to look back on and it's nice. And the problem is time management has never really been my forte. So that being said, I'm Gonna pick the weekly slime thing back up, try to get back to that 2 a week, because I kind of undid all of the catching up I did before, so I'm gonna try. And I really don't want to build up too much rust as far as animation goes either. I want to make sure I stay like learning and improving. I don't want to get rusty. And yeah. Also, I can't really give an exact timeline as to when the next devlog will be for quite a plethora of reasons, honestly. The main one being just, frankly, the lack of storage space. Turns out recording 8 to 12 hours of slime footage and then trying to record a devlog takes up quite the amount of space on my computer, so it'll be a little bit before I can get more storage space, but yeah, until then I could still do the weekly slimes. I'll see if I can get caught up with those, and then yeah, I'll go from there. So all that aside, I hope you enjoyed the first devlog of this Untitled slime survival game, and yeah, until next time, stay safe and take care.